Welcome to the Leading Edge, leadership lessons to help you bring your mission to life. Here's Mindy Audlin and Stacy Collins.
A mission-driven organization is designed for impact. What are the results you want to see? How successful is your team in achieving your goals? Well, I'm Mindy Audlin here with
Stacy Collins.
Hi, Stacy. We're going to have some fun today. So today in this episode, we are going to share some ideas, some resources for tracking your success, for monitoring your impact, and really for pulling everything together that we've been talking about so far in this series. This is about integrating all of these ideas and putting them into a strategic plan that is going to help you scale and grow sustainably. So that's exciting. And
yes,
I'm glad, Stacy, it's great to see you.
Yes, I'm glad to be here. Good to see you. And I'll be sharing my experiences as the small group leader here at Unity of Houston and how to identify, train, and support the growth of new leaders to work together to bring our mission to life.
Yeah, you know, Stacy, in our last episode, we really honed in on leadership development in the organization and how do you find new leaders? How do you support their growth? How do you challenge them to step into new levels of leadership? Any insights or reflections since our last episode together?
You know, there were so many. And one of my favorite things we talked about was the idea of a personal invitation, of seeing people being in action and just extending that invitation. You see where their light shines. You have a conversation about how they would like to serve. You know, we talked about the effectiveness of that versus the from the pulpit, help, we need help model.
None of us have ever done that, right? Well, maybe
right.
I've done that. I used to do that a lot.
Right.
This is so much better. It's so much more powerful. I love that. The personal invitation. Yeah. And for me, one of the biggest things around leadership that I think about is that distinction between feeling like we have to go find leaders versus the consciousness of developing leaders and knowing that everybody that enters into our membership is stepping into, they're raising their hand and saying, yes, I want to be part of the mission of this organization. And as people who are raising their hand to support, what can we do to develop each and every one of them as leaders to the degree that they want to engage in that mission. So that really lends itself to where we're going today. So once you have those empowered leaders on your team, and it's not just crossing your fingers and hoping that some charismatic leader walks in the door, but knowing that every person that comes in and says yes is a potential leader and can bring their strengths to your organization. So then what do you do with those leaders? The beautiful thing about getting to this stage in your engagement plan is that as you develop those new leaders, now it's not just one person holding the program. Now you've got other people who have been through that process, who have had the experience, who are living the teachings, and who can now pass that forward, pay it forward in support of other people coming and having a similar experience. So today is all about planning and progress, thinking ahead, tracking your results. We've talked about tracking results a bit in the past. Today is a little bit different because today we're really talking about this in a holistic way, looking at the entire engagement strategy plan. We're also going to throw in, now I don't know how much time we're going to talk about this, but I definitely want to jump in and talk a little bit about what we do in terms of cultivating team and how we do that. Next week, we're going to talk all about service projects, but today we'll talk a little bit about what we do as a social outing as well and why that is so important as part of this whole engagement process. So Stacy, anything you want to share about why it's so important to put together a system that is, what we're talking about is fairly streamlined, it's fairly simple, but as you grow it, it can expand to the degree that you have leaders that can jump in and help. So what are the benefits that you found in using this kind of system?
Yes, I mean, it's so great to have a system that you can replicate, because if not, you're expending all this energy every time you go to do something new. And okay, that was wonderful. And now guess what? We're going to prepare to do it again in a few weeks and start from scratch. When you do something like a small group model and you put systems into place for your leadership development, for your training of your leaders, and you really start to build up the hosts of the group as leaders themselves, then you can just, like you said, expand without creating exponential amount of work, right?
Right.
So I am a huge fan of templates and timelines. I put a timeline for each launch that we do. And so the next time I just pop in new dates for that timeline and I see what I have to do. There's no wondering where I should be at during this time of the series. And I like to create templates too, so I could just go pop new information, change some dates and update, and here we go.
Saves time, saves energy. And, you know, I am one of those people that I'm kind of a go with the flow, jump in and, you know, just like, let's just do this. But I know that a lot of the people that I work with, they don't think like that. And that makes them crazy when I'm just like sort of, you know, I don't know, what would you call that? When I'm just kind of like spinning and like, here we go and jump in and let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. There are a lot of people out there who like having a system. They like
Yes.
being able, I mean, I have people on my team who they're like, can you send me the dates for the rest of the year? And me, this fly by night, you know, let's wing it person, I can say, yes, I do have the dates for the rest of the year. I can tell you for the next 5 years exactly what we're going to be, when we're going to be launching new groups, when we're going to be having trainings, because we have this process. And the great thing is within that process, there's still room for those of us that are creatives, go with the flow. Let's see what happens, to say, okay,
Yes.
well, what do I want my group to be about this time? Or, you know, there's plenty of room for creativity and plenty of room to bring your gifts. But I think having that system and that structure create something that's inclusive for everybody. So everybody feels like, you know, if I need the time to feel like I really want to get down in the details and feel really confident before I jump in and go, that's there. And if you just want to jump in and go, you know, just come to the orientation and then jump in and go.
Right.
But it does make it a lot easier to engage all kinds of leaders, and not just, in my case, the ones like me that can wing it. So yeah, I love that as well. It makes room for other people to help. So if this is the first time you've joined us, first of all, welcome. And I hope that you share this with your colleagues, share it with your board, share it with your leaders, your group leaders, your ministers. Share this, because the intent is to help you grow your mission-focused organization. We've been talking about how to create an engagement plan, an engagement strategy for a mission-centric organization. And so as a point of review, before we get into really the scalability of this and how do you multiply it, how do you put it all together, I think it makes sense just to do a little bit of review on what we've done in previous episodes to kind of tie it all together. So engagement strategy is the process. If you haven't heard that term before, it's the process of taking someone who's never heard of you, maybe never even heard of New Thought. Maybe they're just one of those spiritual but not religious types, or maybe they're just looking for spiritual community, but they don't know you. They don't know who you are. They don't know anything about your teachings. To take someone from that space into a journey that leads them into becoming a leader, helping you bring your mission to life. So there are 5 steps that we've talked about through the course of this series. The first step is reaching out to those explorers. Explorers are those who are out there looking for a community, looking for a spiritual path. They don't know you exist, but they are values aligned with who you are and what you're about. Once those people come in the door, we go into step 2, which is how do you engage those people? How do you encourage them to come back? We talked about then once they are coming back, once they're engaged in your Sunday services, in your small groups, whatever that might be, how do you expand their understanding of what you teach? How do you indoctrinate? I don't know if we like that word, but how do you help them understand your culture and your history, and here's who we are, and here's what we teach, and here's what we're about. So we call that expand. It's expanding their understanding. From there, this is kind of a dance. As they understand the teachings, then we want to help them express the teachings, because what good is it really if I know the 5 principles, I know the prayer process, but I'm not doing it, you know? So how do we help them go from an understanding of the teachings into fully expressing the teachings in their life? And then finally, the 5th step is, now that they are understanding and expressing the teachings, how do we engage them in leadership? How do they become leaders of others so that they can help this cycle perpetuate? And today is really about tying this all together so that you do have a cycle that perpetuates, that continues to spiral up and to expand as you repeat the process. Rinse and repeat is what we always say for this part. This is the rinse and repeat part of the process. You know, when you get started, and we could talk about this a little bit, when you get started, it can feel like, oh my gosh, what am I taking on? Because it is a new system, right? So you're creating a new system. Now, the great thing is the system has been created for you, and there are a lot of churches that are already using it. So you don't have to go reinvent the wheel. The wheel is out there. But bringing a wheel into your ministry, it may be like people may gather around and say, what is this thing? And does it belong here? Right. So there is a process of introducing this to your congregation. So the first time, I'm just going to put this out there, first time you do this, there's a lot more to do. And as you repeat it, it gets easier. And Stacy, would you like to speak to that at all? As you know, you're at Unity of Houston, you've had small groups before, I know, but this is different. So you want to talk about what it was like getting started and in your first year, some of the challenges that you might have experienced?
Yes. Well, while we had a wonderful experience our first year that we did it, we did sort of make things harder for ourselves than we needed to, looking back, just overthinking it, even though the system was there for us, just really, but will it? But how does this work? And who should we, and what, there's a lot of questions that go around because of the newness of it. But once you engage people and you get their enthusiasm involved too, and you see these leadership skills bubbling forth, then you are able to come to put those into action for your future series. And you can kind of sort of relax a little bit, let yourself relax a little bit. And like you said, keep those dates in the structure that allow you to keep replicating with ease. But then you create that flexibility within that allows for people to be creative. And then you'll just see exciting things happening.
Yeah, I remember that first year I was talking to the Reverend Karen Tudor of Unity of Houston, and she was like, Mindy, this is doing all the things you said it would do.
Yes.
That means you're doing it right. Because
Yes.
when you follow the system is really designed to be able to create that kind of experience. And I know when you're starting something new, we have a tendency to, like, we haven't seen it yet. So there's always, that I really hope this works. I really hope this works. That kind of feeling like I'm rolling it out with a lot of confidence, but maybe you're not feeling it. So I hope this gives you some confidence to go with it. And then also to know, I've had this happen as well, where people will say, well, we did it in the fall. We had a great turnout. It was great. Everything was wonderful. And then we got to January where it was time to rinse and repeat. And we didn't have as many people sign up. And so we're not going to do it. And I just go, no, because I can tell you, your biggest groups will most likely be in the fall. You most likely will not have as many people in January. So don't get freaked out if you're implementing something and it's like, oh, well, the first one was good. Because in most churches that I've worked with, people are used to fall groups. So you're doing something maybe in a slightly different way, but something that they're kind of used to anyway. And when you roll out in January and they're like, what, it's still going? We're still doing this. Some of them are going to be really, really excited about that. In fact, I've had people tell me before, like when they would just do fall groups, they would have these small groups. And one of the reasons ministers didn't like small groups is they would say, well, we'd have these great groups that would launch in the fall. And then after the groups were done, we wouldn't see those people anymore. Like, well, keep the groups going, keep the groups going. And when you do it intentionally, when you're supporting your leaders proactively, that kind of thing typically doesn't happen. So first year, just know, like, fall is a sweet spot. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. When January rolls around, when spring, March, April rolls around, you'll have people there. It may feel like it's a little more work. It may feel like I don't know if this is working. Trust the process. Trust the process. And I agree with Gary Simmons, who would tell his congregation, if we're going to do this, we need to do this full out for 3 to 5 years to create a culture shift. Because the first year, the first launch, the first session is going to feel like pretty much any other fall session. And when you continue using small groups without taking breaks, it's like there's always small groups. You can always be in a small group. That's a culture shift. And when you can sustain that, so at first it's going to be new and people are like, I don't know, do I have the time? All that kind of thing. If you can hold to it, it's like stay on target. You can stay on target and hold to it so that you can get that first round of leaders that can then help the next round of leaders that can help the next round of leaders. That helps a lot. Anything you want to
Yes.
add to what your experience was like?
No, that describes it so well, because now that we are in our fourth fall of doing this, we have layers of leaders, and so there are people that I know that they're going to continue to lead a group all year round. I have people that like to lead a different group, start a new group, seed a new group every time. I have people that their schedule may allow them to really participate in the fall. So it really does just give you, you're not, it's deep and broad, right? You're not working with a shallow pool of volunteers that, we're going to run out at any point. We just keep building the base of leaders and hosts for the groups. And yes, people come to expect it and come to start asking. We won't be even finishing this series, and somebody will say, so when do we start again in January? What are we going to be doing? So
they know it. They know the flow. They know how it works. And that makes things easier. I see a lot of ministries that are, we try to engage people with novelty. Like, oh, we're going to do something different. We're going to do something we've never done. Doing something different that you've never done is work. I mean, that's a lot of work. It takes some effort to do that. So what we're talking about is create the system. And then I love what you said, Stacey, is that people can say, hey, I want to do fall, or I want to do this series, but not that series. So there's a lot of freedom within the structure, but the structure creates some sense of this is what we do. It's consistent, which is really powerful. So this is, I'm just going to give you here's the summary of what we've been talking about throughout the series. And I encourage you, if you haven't listened to the other episodes, to go back and listen to each one of them, because we break down each one of these in detail. But this is how it all kind of ties together. And we talked about, it starts with the overarching mission. You've got to know your mission statement. And the mission statement, we talked about this, maybe I think the first episode, that you got to know what the verb is. Like, what is it that you're here to do? So that's going to be driving everything that we're creating in this strategy is, what are you here to do? If you don't know what you're here to do, then it's hard to measure that you're doing it. And if you're talking about a mission and people don't have any evidence that that mission is being fulfilled in any way, it's hard to ask them to keep giving to something if they can't see that their giving is creating a result. So we are a vibrant spiritual community. I say that kind of thing is a great vision statement, but it's not a mission statement. A mission statement has a strong, solid verb in it, and it's something that you can measure. Transforming lives may seem like it's a difficult thing to measure. But if you really think it through and say, well, what does that mean to us? Then you can start seeing, well, how many of you would say that your life has been transformed in some way through your participation in this group, in this ministry, in a service project, in a social event? How many of you would say your life has been transformed? And you can look and people will raise their hand like, yes, that happened to me. One of the great examples, I think, and Gary Simmons, of course, is a fabulous resource if you're wanting to go deeper in mission-centric ministry. Jane Simmons, in their congregation, Reverend Jane Simmons, she has a process for identifying when people raise their hand and say, my life has been transformed. And that's not exactly their mission statement, but that's sort of the gist of their mission statement. She will work with them on a specific template. Again, here's the template in the system. She has a template that she works with people to help them tell their story to the congregation. So the congregation is having these testimonial spotlights that reinforce to them, when you're giving to our mission, what you're giving to is creating these kinds of life-changing experiences for people that are in our membership. And not only am I just telling you that as a, theoretical idea, here's the person. And here's them speaking in their words what has showed up in their life as a result of participating in this community that you are contributing to and volunteering for and engaged in. So that's incredibly powerful when you can identify this is our mission being fulfilled. So I share that that's the beginning. And then once you know the mission, then how do we engage people into it? Again, that's the 5 steps. So we talk about the explorers. And so as you're creating your strategy, again, I'm doing broad strokes today, but as you create your strategy, to be thinking about who are those explorers, who are the people in your community that would be a good fit for what you're looking for. I just spent the weekend at a women's leadership retreat where I fully expected everybody there to know about the New Thought movement, and not a single person did. I'm like, oh my gosh, these are our people. and none of them have heard of us before. So
Wow.
so much opportunity out there. Who are those explorers? And how do you measure your success in reaching those explorers? So do you have a way of seeing, okay, how many people found us through Facebook? How many people are here because of word of mouth? How many people are here because of an ad we did or a service project we did or something, that we did in the community? So if you can start keeping track of that and noticing who are your newcomers and where are they finding you, it helps you to create better and better systems for reaching those explorers. So that's the first thing to be looking for, the first measurable. And anything, I'm just going to pop back and forth to you, Stacey, see if there's anything you want to add on any of these.
Okay. No, this is good. You were just getting to one of my favorite parts, is the engage. So
The engage. Oh, I do, because you're so good at these contact cards. You do the digital contact card, and then you also are familiar, of course, with the one that's in the bulletin, to reach out and get your information. So that's the measurable. So step 2 is they come in the door, and then how do you engage them? How do you get permission to follow up with them so that they know what's going on in your community, so they can be invited back. If they come in the front door and walk out the back door, do you have permission to invite them back? Have they given you their contact information? So that is a big, big milestone there at the level of engaging them. And Stacey, you want to talk about like how you measure that, or how you track, are you being successful in that? What are some of your processes?
So one of the things, and I just want to say too, is having a welcoming environment is just so, so important. And we think welcoming just because people are smiling. Well, that's great. But what you really want is when people come and they do fill out the connection card and they're giving your information, start have your very first conversation right there, just see what they're interested in and let them know. Come back anytime over here, email me, that we're here to help them get connected. I think that's really important. And so for that, I do a spreadsheet. Maybe not everybody does, but just to see who's coming back to, and then I check them to see if they're getting into small groups, or they may be going to a class, Sunday school class. That's another one that we often recommend for people. And just a follow-up, you do one right away after they visited. Hey, we've seen you. And then another one. Hey, are you finding ways to get connected a little bit down the road? So
I love that. That is so, so perfect. And, so you're engaging people. I love the idea that it's, when you measure something, it helps you see what works and what doesn't work. And if you have a person or a team, and I love, especially Stacey, you said that this is the one I love. I love this one. Like you don't have to have, if you have a good team, you can have different people you might have a marketing team that's there tracking your goals for reaching the explorers. And then you might have a welcome team that's there and they're tracking, how many people are filling out contact cards. But if you have somebody there who is overseeing, are we being successful at this? I think what we find really quickly is, I've seen churches where it's like, oh, if you're new, there's a welcome kit at the back of the room. Help yourself on your way out, like that kind of experience. Versus if you were to really say, well, how effective is that? How many people pick up a welcome kit? How many people take it out? And of those, how many come back? If you really start looking at those numbers, you might realize that, we would be much more effective if we said, hey, if you're new here, we've got this welcome gift for you. Come on over and let us talk to you and get to know you and give you this gift. And I think that personal connection, we talked about it last week, but in our last episode, that personal connection is so engaging and so influential. Can change someone's life. So that's the engagement piece. Like, how are you getting those contact cards? Do you have permission to follow up with people? Sometimes it's just life gets busy. So, it's like I may come once to visit and mean to come back, but I get sidetracked by life. So if I give you my contact information, that means I give you permission to knock on my door and say, come back, we miss you. So that's an important step. Then we get into the expand and express. These are kind of, siblings where we teach them something and then we help them apply it. And what I love about small groups is small groups give you a place where every week and every series, like here's something to take in, to understand who we are more deeply, to process throughout the week. And there's almost always some kind of actionable, something to do, something to practice. What I love about small groups that does not exist without them is in a small group, you actually get to see if and how people are applying the ideas that you talk about the week before. on a Sundays, any given Sunday, you don't really have a chance of saying, okay, how many of you raise your hand if you did that thing? And in a small group, you do. There's much more accountability. I actually did do that once. I had a talk that I did at a church. The minister was on sabbatical, and I was booked to speak twice. So I came in at the beginning of the sabbatical, and then I came in again at the very end of the sabbatical. And in the first one, I talked about the cultural pieces. And we talked about this, I think this was episode 2, how to create a healthy culture. I talked about the 5 elements of a healthy culture, and I had them identify one of those 5 elements that they could work on between that talk and my next talk. And coming back, I asked them, okay, how many of you are still doing that thing that you committed to 30 days ago? Not a single hand, not a single one. So there's my ego check. Like if they had small groups, like small groups make that kind of thing happen. And that's why I love being able to have not only the Sunday experience, but also having the small group experience as well to create that accountability and to really encourage people to put these ideas into practice. So we're going to talk about the other pieces of the engagement model when we come back, talk about social projects, answer your questions, and more when we come back on the Leading Edge.